One of the best times of day for me is first thing in the morning, and it's over a steaming cup of coffee and hot buttered toast when we do our planning and scheduling for the next stages of renovation, or just normal household chores. Over the last few months, we've noticed that the kitchen chairs have come unglued and are a little rickety to say the least. Also, the second Great Wall of Harris needs some finishing touches. I had a little project in mind too, but the wall comes first.
I'm very lucky, as I find restoration and construction very satisfying and always have. But I am guilty of getting very blinkered whilst on a project. So poor Jo quite regularly will speak to me or ask me something and I don't even hear her as I'm so focused on the task in hand. This second Great Wall of Harris, the first you may have seen in previous vlogs, is of the same construction. A stud wall, plasterboarded and skimmed. Jo is always a bit wary of me working at height, but I've never had an issue with it. As a kid I would climb the tallest tree in the woods. I also spent a large part of my working life with British Telecom, climbing poles, etc. As a friend of mine once said, you can skydive without a parachute, you just can't skydive twice. I said to Jo last night over a cold beer how fortunate I am to have the space to build this permanent golf simulator and to be able to indulge in my favourite pastime. And it gets me out of Jo's hair for hours on end, which I think she's quite happy about. It also means that come rain or shine, night or day, I can play around. Play around, not play around. You know what I mean. So this has been the end of 2023 little project, in the build-up to the drier weather when construction work begins on the next exciting chapter.
Our move to France came earlier than anticipated when this little house in the Limousin stole our hearts. We'd love you to continue to follow us, Jo and Steve Harris, and our two rather naughty dogs, Morse and Bright, on our incredible adventure to renovate our new home and attempt to integrate into French society. Bon courage!
Well, there we have it, folks. The finished, almost finished, second Great Wall of Harris. It's been skimmed by our good friend Jason the plasterer, top bloke. You know, I turn my hand to just about anything. Not very good at any of them, but I turn my hand to it. But plastering is not for me. If you want your floor plastered, then I'm your man. But if you want anything else plastered, get it plasterer. There's a definite art to it, and Jason is indeed an artist. He's done the ceilings in the bedrooms next door, and he's done this wall for us here, and it's turned out really, really great. So yeah, don't know what to do with it yet. I want to put a full-size Ducati on there, but Jo's not keen. So we'll have to see. Anyway, onwards and upwards.
It's makeover time! It's a bit dark and hard to see, this little cabinet, but it's made of something like balsa wood, very light in weight and very light in colour. I had the idea of making it look like copper with the gorgeous green patina it creates. So I had a look through my acrylics and came up with an idea. And yes, I didn't put any cover on the floor, so got into a bit of trouble for that. For the top, I used a swirling action with a large brush, which helps to blend the colours. To start with, it looked quite good. For the drawer, I thought I'd try to create a marble effect. So over the white, I used Naples yellow for depth and raw umber for the feathered lines. I was quite happy with the outcome. Okay, so this is what I've ended up with. Unfortunately, the copper paint, when it's not in the sun, looks a little bit just like old bits of wood, bits of sort of orange wood. So it's not quite the colour that I was sort of expecting, although I do quite like it, and the patina has come out quite well. I decided to paint the drawer front mainly copper because it just sort of looks a bit better. So I've left the side panel the sort of marbly effect, which I think looks quite nice. So yeah, I think I'm quite pleased with it. And this is it in situ in the bathroom. As you can see, I think you can see what I mean now by the copper colour. It doesn't really look copper unless you really look closely. It just looks brown. And it's not the brown that I would choose, but I don't know. It's quite sweet. The little marble effect has worked out very well. So I think all in all, I'm quite pleased with it. Well, I wasn't pleased, so I added a bit more colour to the front, which I didn't like either. So I started again. I painted the whole thing Harris green, which goes perfectly with the boarding in the bathroom. It just is such a classy colour, and I know we've used it everywhere, but I love it. It actually made the whole thing look a bit more substantial, and the slight green sheen of the satin paint leaves it a little more professional looking. I thought I'd try to make the top look like old distressed wood in a similar vein to the ancient cabinet that already stands in the bathroom. I did this by utilising the metallic acrylic paints I bought recently, which again give a slight glow. I used cappuccino, a little silver, and more white. I even stabbed it with a screwdriver to give it an even more distressed look. Using an old sponge, I removed some of the paint, reapplying when necessary. I added a splodge of burnt umber and then repeated the progress. I used the sponge to really blend the paint. I eventually used some Payne's Grey, which is a delicious blue-black, and using that same swirling motion, things began to take shape. So now here we are in situ again in the bathroom. I just think it looks a lot better. Funnily enough, in the film, it looks quite irregular, but on the actually in life, it looks more wooden than it does. It looks sort of like a paint. It looks like a paint effect on the film, but actually, in real life, it looks really nice. So yeah, looks a lot better. I think just every time I walked into the bathroom, I just sort of went, ooh, I can see it jumped out at me, and I just thought, no, that's no good. So this is a lot better. Just looks much smarter. Good.
Okay, so I have been tasked by my good lady wife to repair some oak kitchen chairs that we bought quite a few years ago, and the joints have started to get a bit dry, the glue has dried out, and a few of them rock and roll a bit. So I brought these two out into the barn to glue up yesterday, and to open the joints a bit further so I could get some glue in, you take an ordinary speed clamp and you turn it back to front. So instead of it being a squeezing together type clamp, it's a squeezing apart. So you can spread things apart. This is what I did. So as soon as I put this on there and started trying to open the joint a little bit, the whole thing collapsed like a clown's car, and it was all on bits on the floor. So now overnight I've left it to dry. I've glued all the joints back up and left it to dry with these clamps on. So later on today, well even now actually, because it's dry now, because it's dried overnight, I can remove these clamps. moment of truth. But it's been so cold in the barn the last few weeks that the glue takes ages. In the summer this glue would be dry in an hour. In the winter it takes a long time to dry. Rock solid. How's that? So tomorrow I will do the same with this one, but this time I will film it all, and if this one falls apart, because it has got loose joints exactly the same as that one has, you'll see what I'm up against. Right, so I think you saw the other day that we have chairs that rock. Chairs that have come unglued. Actually, this one's nowhere near as bad as the last one. So, the procedure is to take an ordinary, I don't know which camera you can see me on, take an ordinary speed clamp, which usually they are this way round. And you use them for clamping onto things or clamping things together or holding things together. But if you take one end off and put it back on the wrong way around, instead of being a clampy together type clamp, it's a spready apart type clamp. So if I try, if you can see that, but I've just been able to open this joint up enough to get a bit of glue around inside there and then squeeze it all back up again. So I'll just clean up these joints a bit and come back to you later. Right, well, this is one of the little joint pieces that I'm just going to need to clean up these ends. Bit of noise, I'm afraid. On the belt sander there, we've just tidied up the ends of these just so it'll go back in neatly. Just got rid of all the old glue and just put a nice little taper on each end. Okay, so we just clean up the old glue off this joint here. Trade clamp.
Right, so yeah, all the rest of the joints are still solid, so it was only this one at the front that had come apart on this chair. The one I did yesterday, just when I put the first clamp on to stretch just this joint apart, the whole thing just disassembled. So I had to glue all the joints back up again, but this one is nowhere near as bad. So we leave that to dry overnight, and it's so cold in the barn that this wood glue, normally in the summer this would take, I don't know, an hour to dry maybe, 2 hours for it to really go off. I don't know what the instructions say, but yeah, in the summer months when it's warm, this goes off sometimes faster than you can use it. But in the winter, I could come back here in 2 hours and that will still be tacky. So yeah, we'll leave that to dry. Come back tomorrow, put the seat back on, give this a clean up with a bit of, this is water based, so it'll just wash off any residue, and yeah, good to go.
So hooray! I've got my kitchen chairs back, and they're all beautifully glued together, and yeah, I did a good job. Brilliant.
Excuse me, what are you doing?
So, the end of another few busy days. Bright has now taken to sitting on the bench with Steve of an evening. What a change from that scared little dog. A bientôt!